Before NRC, Epel lived in a house with barely enough room for his family, as his family is larger than most in the area. Epel has no siblings, and explains that he lives with 8 people: his mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, aunt, uncle, cousin, and great-grandmother. Epel says that it's pretty normal to live with one's extended family in their village, and dorm life at NRC isn't that bad, as he is used to being around lots of people back home. While Epel's parents are magicless, he says that his grandmother and great-grandmother are both witches. Lilia explains that witch and wizard are archaic terms, with both now referred to as mages in the present day. Mages might be rare in Epel's hometown. He says that there weren't many around him growing up. Epel references his grandmother often, saying that he sent her a photo from the opening ceremonies and asking the prefect to take a picture of him in his phantom bride tuxedo to send to her. He also gets her a postcard as a souvenir during the glorious masquerade event. We meet Epel's grandmother, Maria, during the Harveston event, and see a picture of her from years ago where she is in a similar pose to Epel in his phantom bride card. Sebek, Idia, and Jade all mistake the young Maria for Epel himself. Before NRC, Epel would go to school in the town next door, which was a 3-hour bike ride from his home, though his parents would drive him to and from school on rainy or snowy days. Epel says that he would sometimes play in a barn as a child, where he once got trapped by snow. His family didn't know where he was and no one could hear him calling for help, so he ended up breaking down the door to save himself. Epel temporarily had a pet rabbit when he was younger, after one got caught in one of his father's traps. He nursed it back to health and would take it on walks, and says that he would get nervous that it would get attached to someone other than him, since people would feed it vegetables when they went out. He eventually released the rabbit back into the wild. When Ace complains about the variety of shops in the town on the island, Epel is surprised, saying that there aren't even any places to eat hamburgers at all where he is from, which surprises Ace.
そういう話じゃないよ。僕の住んでた村にはハンバーガーを食べられるお店がなくってさ、車で街に出た時に何度か食べたくらいだから、ソースの味なんて覚えてないよ。
はい？マジで？あんなどこにでもあるようなチェーン店がないとか。
Epel says that Halloween in Harveston was more of an event to gear up for the upcoming apple harvest, when 40 relatives and people from the village would gather at his house to eat. When asked why he is glad he is able to use magic, Epel talks about being able to harvest apples from the tops of trees and levitate crates of apples back home. He also tells a story about a time he lost a scarf that his grandmother made for him when he was on his way to school, and a bird stole it out of the basket on his bike when it took his breakfast. Determined to get back his scarf, Epel borrowed a broom from a person sweeping nearby and flew after it. He says that he made it in time for class, but someone found his abandoned bicycle and called the school, which led to everyone discovering that he'd been flying. While his teachers were angry at him and his family was worried, he says that he did not regret anything, as he'd been able to get his scarf back. Epel says that while people in his village were kind, once he started going to elementary school in another town he would get into a lot of fights. His grandmother says that Epel would come home in tears, but Epel insists that he just kept facing down people who gave him trouble, even if they were bigger or stronger, earning him the name of the poison apple of the Felmier family. Epel says that he has been a target for bullies since he was a kid, as people tend to assume that he is weak, and, back home, the only way anybody ever saw you as powerful was if you were big and buff and strong. Epel has a voice line about how he was never able to get into sports clubs back home, for reasons, and those reasons might have something to do with being undervalued due to his small stature. There are many references to how Epel was the first child to be born in Harveston in a while. He says that he received a lot of stuffed animals as gifts from people in the village as a result, which he donated to his infant cousin when he was born. Epel has a conversation with Jade about how glad he is to have been able to have a sleepover with him and the other students, as it is something he has always wanted to do with friends. As his cousin is still a baby, the Harveston event was his first time having such an experience. Epel says that he didn't really talk with many people his own age until enrolling at NRC, though the people in the village all treated him like their own son. We get more information about Epel's family's situation in Book 5, when they send him 10 crates of unsold product. Epel explains, "We get fewer and fewer tourists every year, too. The direction things are going, well." After hearing about Dusa's childhood and witnessing the marketing skills he's gained as a result, Epel invites him to Harveston so that he can help the village come up with ideas for selling more apples. Maria also says that Harveston has gone into decline. When asked where he would like to go if he were able to fly anywhere he wants, Epel says that he wants to go to the capital city of the Shaftlands, to which he has never been as he lives too far away. Epel says that a lot of the classmates he had in middle school all wanted to go to school and work in the capital city in the future, and even people who once lived in Harveston have moved on to the capital or its neighboring cities. Lilia observes that it doesn't seem like Epel himself aspires to a life in the capital one day, and Epel responds, "Of course not," saying that he found it rude how the people who left the village would complain about how there is nothing to do in the area when they have such beautiful nature and delicious apples.
観光地とかはないけど、豊かな自然も美味しいリンゴも、僕の地元には他にもたくさんの魅力があるのに。
Epel explains that while he doesn't want to live in the capital city himself, he thinks it would feel good to look down at the crowded streets from the vantage point of a broom, and he also wants to gather information about all the things that the capital lacks that can be found in Harveston, since people tell him that the capital has everything. We often get references to the various skills Epel has gained as a result of his upbringing. He is an adept horseback rider, can drive farm buggies and the chariot in Book 6 as a result, knows how to sew, can play the concertina, is accustomed to tending cuts and scrapes with local herbs, has been peeling apples since he was a child, and also taught himself how to do apple carving in order to make unsellable apples more appealing.